All right, welcome to the Power of Our Story. Today we have Michael Parker as our guest. Here on the Power of Our Story, we call him our favorite bull rider. Michael Parker is a Marine Corps veteran turned cowboy and entrepreneur. After leaving the military, Michael was diagnosed with PTSD, depression, and anxiety, which led to a long road to recovery. While working on ranches in Hawaii, Michael discovered healing through work with horses and in nature. Fueled by the desire to help others overcome their struggles and using the tools that helped him, he set out to create Second Chance Rehabilitation Ranch, which just launched its first program. Healing retreats for veterans and first responders, Michael also partners with several nonprofits that serve similar missions. When he isn't working on starting his ranch or working with America's heroes, he spends his time riding bulls and doing leather work. And I have seen a video of him riding a bull, and it's like totally scary. So, but I just want to welcome, Michael, we all love you. And we welcome you here today to share your story. And I appreciate you so much. So I'm going to hand it over to you to share, and then we'll have question and answer afterward.
Well, I just appreciate everything you've done here, Sarah, and getting to be a part of this and watch it grow over the last year and a half. It's crazy that it's been that long. Honored to be here and share my story. Going to share some things that I've not shared a lot or don't typically share on podcasts. So this will be interesting. But I will say to start off, I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, been through some things. And something that I've learned is you can either let the things that happen to you and your mistakes define you and make a victim out of you, or you can use them to go to a higher place. With that being said, I guess the best place to start is when I was younger. There's trauma pretty much all the way through my life. So we'll start there. I was in the Marine Corps. I decided that's what I wanted to do from a young age. My dad is career Army, still serving. He adopted me when I was 2.5 years old. Shortly after my second birthday, him and my mom got married. He's not my biological father. I kind of say that I was doomed to be a Marine because my biological father was a Marine, and my dad, prior to becoming Army, was a Marine as well. So just kind of runs in the blood, I guess. But yeah, so there's trauma there from an early age. I guess when you're young, you don't realize the impact of not having your biological father in your life. It was something I realized at a much older age. There was this feeling of not being good enough. I always wondered why I wasn't good enough for him to want to be in my life, which led to me being pretty rebellious as a kid. Couple that with my dad and his trauma. Unfortunately, he doesn't admit that he has trauma. He's at that point still where he's like, it's compartmentalized, it's good, which we all know doesn't work. But we always butted heads, and we went at it quite a lot as a kid. And our relationship didn't start getting better until I joined the Marines. And then I saw myself doing a lot of the same things that he did. So it kind of had that realization in my head that, oh, the military made him this way. Now I know it's the trauma, but I was like, oh, well, he's like that because of the military. But obviously, all those fights and everything that we got into left some kind of trauma there. That feeling of not being good enough pushed me to prove everybody wrong. It drove me for a long time until eventually, it all catches up with you. Now let's fast forward after graduating from high school, joined the Marine Corps. My time in the Marine Corps was short. So I was stationed out in San Diego at Marine Corps Air Station Miramar. I was in a relationship with someone in the Navy. It was a very toxic relationship, kind of trapped in it. My command stepped in and to interfere in that situation. And then afterwards, I was accused of sexual assault by that sailor. And I guess you can call it my luck, whatever you want to call it. The Marine Corps had just gotten in trouble for not appropriately handling sexual assault reports. So they decided they were going to try to make an example out of me. So I was thrown in the brig, spent 9 months in there from January 17th of 2014 until October 17th. So right at 9 months. That was, I guess, that was kind of traumatic too. You're sitting in there accused of something that you didn't do, that doesn't look good. Also, you just, at least if you're convicted of something, you know how much longer you have to stay in there. But I had no idea if I was going to be in there a couple months, a couple years. I didn't know if I was going to be convicted. I didn't know, and then to add to that, you had this betrayal from my command. I think we all look at our command and expect them to protect us and to be there for us. And at that point, I wasn't even convicted of anything, but they treated me like I was this terrible monster, and they're very hateful and spiteful towards me. They were required to come check on me once a week, and just the looks of disgust and everything from all of my senior enlisted, it really hurt. It really stung. I will say there was one staff sergeant, and I always loved it when he came. Staff Sergeant Perrin, I'll never forget him, because he was the only one that when he would come and visit would talk to me like I was a normal human being, was actually cared how I was doing. So I always looked forward to it when he came. But also, I found out later that they had told everybody that I wasn't allowed to have visitors. So I didn't get visitors that whole entire time, except for the twice that my mom flew out there to see me. So I just felt like everybody at my command hated me. Well, like I said, 9 months later, due to all the evidence that had piled in, they dropped the charges. So I was released from the brig. Imagine huge sigh of relief there. But I was honestly scared to go back to my unit. I was like, these guys hate me, and you're going to send me back to them. I was under this impression that everybody there was going to treat me like crap. So they turned me out of the brig on a Friday after hours, let me out with no money, no wallet, nothing. And they're just like, I was like, well, what am I supposed to do for food? They just treated me like shit. Like, that's how bad it was. But I will say, I won't forget when I got back to my barracks room, I ran into one of my buddies, and here I was feeling guilty and feeling I was kind of like ashamed, I guess. And I just remember how excited he was to see me, like wide eyes, huge smile, just so open to see me, and gave me the hugest hug. He's like, "Parker, I'm so glad to see you." And I remember all I had was my uniforms, because the whole time you're in there, you just wear your uniforms every day. I was honestly, at that point, I hated the Marine Corps. I was sick of wearing that uniform. And I was like, man, I just want to feel normal. I just want to put on normal clothes. So he took me back to his room, gave me some normal clothes, took me out to dinner, and it was me and three of my buddies. And I remember they were just so happy to see me, and I was just so confused. And I asked them while we were eating, I was like, why are you guys being so nice to me? Like, you guys don't hate me. And, it was at that point that I realized that the only reason nobody come visit me was because my command had told them that they weren't allowed to. And to see that they actually still cared, which I guess added to my discontent for my command. You can just imagine I was not a stellar Marine after that. I pretty much told them every opportunity they could go shove it. And when they would try to push back, I'd be like, what are you going to do? Kick me out faster or throw me in the brig? I don't care either way. So I left the Marine Corps with a very bitter taste in my mouth. Denied being a Marine for a long time until I finally realized, even though I had that bad experience, it was a part of me that was a part of my journey. That was a part of who I am. And there was a lot of good things in it as well. Another important detail is following my release from the brig. So I got out in October. Well, in November, I was still waiting to get discharged. And I had an incident where I was out drinking with a couple buddies who were in the Navy, and some things happened that I didn't consent to. I found myself in the very situation that I was accused of and locked in the brig for. Never filed anything, never said anything about it for a few reasons. One, I wasn't 21 yet, so I figured they'd probably just slap on a charge for underage drinking, knowing my luck. Also, why would they believe me? Like, I literally just was accused of doing the very thing that happened to me. And the third one was, dude, you're supposed to be this big, tough Marine. You're not supposed to allow yourself to get into a situation like that. So you can imagine all of that trauma there. Got out, went home, back to Arkansas. And I'd say within 6 months, I really started struggling. Started drinking real heavily. I was engaged at the time. And I remember just this one incident where there was just so much rage coursing through me. I was so upset with my fiance. I don't even remember what she had done, but I pulled a knife before I even knew it. And the only thing I could do to keep from hurting her was to hurt myself. Like, there was just that much rage, like somebody was going to get hurt. So I ended up stabbing myself 4 times in the chest. So following that, I drove myself to the hospital. And of course, they put me on a 72-hour hold, at which point I was diagnosed with PTSD, depression, anxiety, a long list of things. Also, prior to that, in that 6-month window before that happened, that very friend that was so kind to me, he was killed on deployment. So I was dealing with that as well. So there was just a whole bunch of things there. And, they teach you the signs, of PTSD and all of that. And I knew I was showing the signs, but I was like, can't be me. I've never deployed. I've never done this. It'll just go away. That was kind of my logic. Obviously, we know that is stupid logic. That's not how it works. So then became this long road to recovery. Of course, they put me on all kinds of different medications. A lot of them didn't work, and the ones that worked didn't actually work because I didn't feel like myself. So it just added to the depression. Then I had 3 suicide attempts, any of which should have killed me. One was by taking a bunch of those sleeping pills that they were handing me like candy. I had stockpiled a bunch, and I took them all at one time. Woke up 2.5 days later in my bed. It's like, well, that didn't work. Fast forward a few weeks, I was over it. I was tired of fighting, tired of feeling the way that I was. So I took my pistol, put it to my head. I pulled the trigger, and all I heard was a click. And I was like, well, that didn't work. Uh, think I would learn my lesson that God wasn't done with me at that point, but I had to try one more time. And honestly, that last time was my saving grace. That was the real start to my recovery. So I'd actually tried to hang myself the third time. And to this day, nobody still knows how I got down. The rope was still hanging in the tree, and I woke up on the ground. My great grandma was standing there. She had already called the police. When they showed up, I got into a tussle with them. Um, Ended up in jail for 60 days. At which point I reconnected with an old friend who was stationed out in Hawaii, and her exact words were, "Michael, you need to get your shit together." And I was like, "Yeah, I know." So ended up going out there to Hawaii. Um, Also got to say, very thankful for my probation officer, because she could have very easily, not let me leave the state. But she's like, if you can go do better for yourself, I want you to succeed. And she didn't have to let me go to Hawaii, but she did. And it was out there that I found my healing. Within 3 weeks, I ran out of medication, and I was like, I'm not going back for more. So quit cold turkey. But I started getting outdoors more. I started hiking. I started kayaking. I was working on a ranch. Started out as a zip line tour guide. Ended up working with the horses, and found so much healing working with those horses. Did that for 3 years. And, I was actually out on a horseback ride, giving a tour, and the thought just hit me in that moment. I was like, if this stuff can save your life, how many other people can you help with this? And so that's where the idea to start a ranch to help others out came from. So when everybody would ask me, well, what's your plans for the future? Do you plan on doing this the rest of your life? I'd be like, well, my 5-year plan is to start this ranch and help people. But for 2 years, I just sat on that idea. It was just my 5-year plan for 2 years. And it was actually not until August of 2019 that I was let go from the ranch I was working at. I was living on that ranch and working at that ranch. So when they let me go, I lost my place to live and I lost my job. So just like that, I was homeless and unemployed. And so I immediately started applying for jobs, applied for at least 100 jobs, couldn't even get an interview. And I'm like, what is going on here? Like, I am well overqualified to flip burgers at McDonald's, and they won't even call me for an interview. Um, so at that point, God put a life coach in my life. His name's Kirby Ingles. Love that man to death, because he asked me the hard question. He said, well, what are you trying to do with your life? So I started telling him all the jobs I was applying for. He's like, no, you're missing the question. He's like, if you could be anywhere in 5 years, where would it be? And I was like, well, doing this ranch. So he got me down that road, got me started, went through some programs with the Ambitious Vet Network, really started to get this thing going, built that confidence in myself, because obviously I was like, I don't know anything about running a business. I don't have these skills. It was a bunch of, I don't know how to do this. And then I started realizing, hey, I had more skills and more knowledge than I let myself believe. And 3 months, I spent 3 months unemployed and homeless, and I had a job. And then I realized that if I hadn't lost that job, we wouldn't be sitting here today having this conversation. I would have just kept doing whatever, and I would have never started working towards building Second Chance Rehabilitation Ranch. So I got a job, continued to live homeless for another 6 months out there in Hawaii, because I was like, well, I can go pay for a place to live and be comfortable, or I can take that money and start building this dream. And so I was like, it's not bad sleeping in a hammock on the beach, waking up to the sunrise every morning. I think I can tough it out. So I continued to be homeless out there until COVID hit, and then moved back to Arkansas. Things just, it's funny because when those kind of things happen, I'm just like, why? Like, we had this good thing going, and I realized, everything was for a reason. And just like the move coming up. Everything happens for a reason. We can't always see the future outcome until you get there. So it doesn't make sense in that moment. But when you look back, you're like, if that hadn't happened, then I wouldn't be here. And you start to realize that everything happens for a reason, and God's got a plan bigger than our plans. And so, yeah, so back in September, we finally were able to launch our healing retreats for veterans. We got to put one of those on. We just got back from Kentucky, putting on one in conjunction with another organization, Camaraderie Rescue Mission. And we're getting ready to move down to Texas on December 1st to go help another organization build up their veteran program. In exchange, they're going to let us use their land to do our retreats. And some other big plans that we've got in the future is next year, we're going to take the show on the road, and we're going to travel the country with some horses and put on our retreats across the country for veterans and first responders. But that is pretty much our story. I just want to say, the name Second Chance Ranch is for a reason, right? You can see I made a lot of mistakes in my life. I've been through a lot of things, but I believe that each day you wake up, it's a second chance. God's giving you a second chance to do better than you did yesterday. You might not have made big mistakes today, but we all have something at the end of the day we wish, I should have done that, or I should have done that differently. Well, hey, guess what? When you wake up in the morning, you get another chance to do those things and to be better. And, it doesn't happen quickly. Those changes happen over time, but that constant state of progressing to be a better person and to be better than you were, it's going to take you to astronomical places. So yes, a lot of the stuff that's happened to me in my life sucks. I've done some stupid stuff, but I don't let it define me. And you can either let it make a victim out of you, or you can own it. But I guess we'll open it up to questions.
I got to say that was beautifully shared, Michael. Thank you. And I just, it's amazing just to see at a young age, you always took the opportunities. And that is fantastic. When you could find, no matter what happened, you didn't get stuck in letting things define you. I just have one question before I open it up here. What would have happened, do you think? Or how much did it mean to you? Which I can't imagine what that felt like, to be betrayed and to be in the brig and to be so young and to feel like, like your command totally turned their back on you. Like you said, that you always thought of them as they would protect you. And it was a false accusation. What would have happened had you not gotten the reception of your friends that totally loved you and took care of you and took you in and smiled when they saw you and, fed you? And how much did that mean to you? And what do you think would have happened if you had not had that?
That's a really good question. I would probably been a lot worse than I was. It definitely took a big load off of me, knowing that all my peers still loved and supported me. But I feel like it also made a bigger made the discontent greater between me and my command. So I'm not really sure. That's not something I've ever really thought of.
So it just kind of went from shame, even though you were not guilty, it went from shame to anger at the betrayal. But I guess I'm just thinking too, it is amazing how healing that is when we are surrounded by love, when we're in a really hard place. So.
Yeah, I guess it gave me, I was able to breathe that sigh of relief to know that my peers didn't think of me the same way as my command did. And if my command would have just apologized and been like, hey, we were wrong about you, it would have made things better. But when you could look at them and they would look at you and you could see the look on their face that they knew that they had misjudged me, but nobody would ever say it. And I think that's what bothered me the most, was you could see that they would avoid eye contact because they knew that they had misjudged me. And I think that kind of hurt the most, honestly.
Yeah, that's huge. Like, what is so hard about just saying, you know what, we messed up, I'm sorry, we were wrong, and how freeing that could be. So, okay, so the mama bear is coming out of me right now. That makes me really mad. Anyway, listen, I'm so proud of you, Michael. And we have a question from Ray.
Hey, and to me, you're always cowboy. That's how I met you. So I'm gonna address you as such. But Michael, first of all, I appreciate you sharing that story, man. It means a lot. The fact that you're super courageous and are able to just come out here and be in your feelings and just express everything that you've done. I don't think I'd ever heard that full story. I know that there's, I've heard bits and pieces. I don't think I've ever heard you say, the whole thing altogether. So mine was less of a question, more of a comment. I love you, brother. Let me know if there's anything you need. And as far as, addressing what Sarah was just saying, it sucks that we live in this world where we can admit, we're too proud as people to admit that we are wrong, and it is something that we just need to keep at the forefront and remind ourselves every day. Because I know I've done it. Oftentimes for me, most recently it comes with like my kids. They'll do something, and I'll be like, "What are you doing?" That Army drill sergeant wants to come out and just, "What's going on?" And I have to remind myself that, I need to step back and look at the overall picture. And then I have to admit to myself that I was wrong, and then admit it to my kids. And that always sucks because they look up to you as the grown-up that's supposed to have all the answers. And but anyway, just my daily struggle with that. And it's something that we all have to work on. We all have to, realize when we're wrong. And hopefully we can spread that and spread acceptance. And I'm so glad that you're here and that you got through it, and I'm so happy to have met you. So anyway, thank you.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Ray.
it, brother.
Looks like we've got half the group with their hands up, so we've got a lot of comments and questions happening here. So next is Meredith.
Hey, Cowboy, thanks for sharing today. Even going so far back as before the military, talking about what you learned about your father and the rejection, because not everybody, especially men, like to talk about that. And I think that relates a lot to a lot of people, and I really appreciate that. How has working with horses changed you, and how have you seen it change other veterans so far? Because a lot of people, I've witnessed it, but a lot of people maybe here haven't, and so I'd like to hear it from your perspective. I think that would help.
So I'll address that first part about that childhood trauma. Like, I feel probably most of us have something there in the past, and if you don't go all the way back and you just focus on, you got to heal everything, right? If you just focus on the recent stuff, well, that old trauma is still there. You're not getting to the root of the problem. And the path to healing isn't a short one. There's not an easy fix. It's a constant journey. And like all the time, I still find myself, I'm like, somebody will say something about some kind of trauma or something, and I'm like, is that event that happened back then, is that impacting me now? And so you have to really like look at it, and it takes a lot of self-awareness to make that journey back. But horses, oh man, When I started working with horses, I had one heck of a temper. I still get fired up from time to time now, but yeah, it was bad, y'all. And we all know horses are unpredictable and they like to do their own thing. And that used to frustrate the heck out of me, and I would get worked up. Well, the thing is, horses feed off your energy, so they can feel that. And then what's going to happen? They're not going to settle down. They're going to get more riled up. So I had to learn to take a step back, take a deep breath, and cool myself down to the point, you keep doing that over and over again. And then you get to the point where instead of even getting mad that this horse is doing something dumb, you just kind of laugh about it. And you're like, oh, this is what we're doing. Okay. And then I noticed that I stopped being such a angry driver and having road rage, like, what the heck, you just cut me off. And I'd just be like, okay, please drive safe. Like, I wouldn't even, you start to have that control of your emotions, and you get that self-awareness. It became to the point my horse would even start acting just a little weird, and I would check myself and be like, hey, is there something going on in me, or is that just the horse doing its thing? And with other veterans and myself, just hanging out with the horses. It doesn't even have to be riding or anything. They are just so attuned to what's going on. And the same with dogs. I love dogs as well, but I love my horses more. And they can pick up on how you're feeling. I don't know how many times I've broke down with my horse in Hawaii, and I would just be like hugging her, and I would start crying, and then she would just kind of wrap me up in a hug and show me that affection, which, I'm not gonna lie, just made things worse. Started crying even more. Not afraid to admit it. But yeah, it's very healing. There's a Winston Churchill quote that says the best thing for the inside of a man is the outside of a horse, and there's so much truth in that.
Oh, wow, that's powerful. Thanks. Paul.
Hey, Michael, thanks for your story. I know in the work we do now, we run into a lot of people that have what we call, father wound. There's all kinds of different terms for that. I really appreciate you sharing that part this morning. I'm interested in hearing a little bit about, as you're working with horses, are you running into other men? I really think this is a big need in our society for men to be strong enough, not to come out and bleed over everybody, but to come out and say, I've worked through this. These are things I've learned. And do you see yourself as helping other men specifically because of your story and having that tough cowboy part of you that you need to have, but also have that sensitivity? I think it's a beautiful blend that you're developing in your life. I wonder if you could just speak to that maybe.
Well, I mean, like I spent a long time asking myself why I had to go through all these different things. And I think, Sarah, we had this conversation on your call yesterday. Why is the wrong question to be asking. It's the who, the how, the what. How is this? How can I use this? How is God going to use this to help other people? What's the purpose in going through this? Because there's a reason for everything. The who is this going to help? And, when I got over asking myself why, because when you ask yourself why, you kind of put yourself in that victim mentality instead of empowering yourself. And when you start asking the who, the what, the how, you're amazed at how many people around you are struggling and how many people you can relate to, both men and women. They're going through some stuff, and I'm like, hey, I can't exactly say that I know how you feel, because we're all different, but I've been through similar, and this is how I came through that. So that's kind of just what I try to do, is just help men, women, whoever I can, be a role model for younger kids, coming up, whoever I can help.
Yeah, that thought about why, there's so many things that we'll never know the answers to. And so we can get stuck in the why, especially like surviving a suicide. So that was a good conversation. Thanks, Michael. Chris Gregorio.
Brother, thank you again. You're amazing as always. I'm not going to recap everything that everybody else already said. I think you're an amazing man, an amazing human being, and very selfless. So maybe if you can answer the question, because I think a lot of people who deal with some of these things, as all of us have at some point, where do you think that you found, number one, the courage to confront this and to fight it long before you even began speaking about it? And where did you feel, or at what point did you find the self-worth that you were worth it, that you were worthy of fighting for yourself? Because I think a lot of people in these moments, like you said, getting trapped in the why, think that maybe they're not worth it, or it's not worth the fight. They don't belong. For you, where did that kind of epiphany in those two things, if you would? Thanks, bro.
Yeah, so I really definitely struggled with my self-worth, and obviously I tried to give up the fight a few times. I think after the third attempt, I finally was like, okay, like God's not going to let me take the easy way out of this. And it took that hard spot in my life. If I hadn't got into that tussle with the cops and ended up in jail, the next time, and I'm sure if it hadn't been for that, there would have been a next time. I probably would have been successful, and we wouldn't be having this conversation here today. And for me, that was kind of that turning point. But to something that I had in another conversation earlier, there's different pillars, right? And if one of those is out of whack, it throws everything off. You've got to heal body, mind, and soul. And I was working on soul, and I was struggling with my mind. I was leaning real heavy in my faith, but I wasn't building up those other areas. So they're still out of balance, and I was still way out of whack with all of that. So it wasn't until I got to Hawaii and I started getting outdoors and I started healing my body, and then I started healing my mind, and those pillars started to get back in balance and things start to line out. And then what was the second question? My memory sucks.
When did you feel that you had the self-worth with the courage to fight? Because a lot of people say, I'm not strong enough, I don't have the courage to confront this or to face this. At what point did you, or what tools did you use to find the courage to do that? Or was it just
really
God?
struggle
At
with
some
that.
point you said you had it.
Yeah. I really struggle with that. If it wasn't for other people being there to support me, and I guess when you've got enough people around you that support you, and they show you who you really are, you start to believe in yourself. And if it hadn't been for those people, I probably wouldn't have found that drive and that push forward. And also, the thoughts, finally hit me, like how devastated would my family and everybody be if I was to not be here anymore. So I can't say the exact moment, but you finally just, that realization just clicks and you're like, okay, like that's not the way out. I don't think that I ever really wanted to give up. You just kind of get tired of fighting. And there's a certain point where you're just like, it's like being in the military, right? There's a certain point in boot camp where you're just like, do I even want to do this crap anymore? But you got to find that end goal. Okay, 3 more weeks and I'll be a Marine or whatever it is. And you've got to just keep pushing forward. I think a lot of times when you're in that darkness, you're focused on what's right in front of you and you lose focus on the end of the tunnel.
Love it. Thank you so much for sharing, brother.
David.
So I first want to say I hate always going after Gregorio because he's the most insightful, thoughtful person I've ever met in my entire life. And I just feel this big after every time he opens his mouth, because he's like the largest personality and best thinker I've ever met. But moving on. Parker, you said a couple things that, and I'm a note taker, so a couple things that really stood out to me. You start out by saying, don't let your mistakes define you. I think that is such a huge thing, such a simple concept, and probably the hardest thing to do after a military or first responder, law enforcement, in my case, experience. And I mean, throughout life, we all make mistakes, no matter what you do or don't do. But I just think that's such a huge concept, and it's something we all have to think about regularly to get past. The past is the past, and nothing you can do to change it. Like you said, the second chance, waking up every morning to redefine yourself. And I think that's so important, and keep going forward that message, man, because more people need to hear that. That's huge. And the whole concept of betrayal, and I put a small note in the comments of it, that's a huge factor in law enforcement as well. And obviously your betrayal was different. It came through an acute incident, but law enforcement's been experienced betrayal acutely for several years now. But I think over a period of time, beyond that as well, in different aspects. And I think that concept of betrayal is not something we talk about enough, certainly not openly. And I think that needs to be more of an open discussion. And your example of it is very powerful. And I think it transcends a lot of different people's experiences through their own examples. So I appreciate you talking about that in that way. And on a personal note, man, you are the definition of resilience. I don't know how to phrase it any other way. And the general working definition of resilience is bouncing back. But as I've said before in the past, my definition of it, and you are the prime example of this, is bouncing forward. And man, you are the definition of bouncing forward, and good for you. And man, I'm so happy that you're such an unsuccessful human at suicide, because I love having you around. And you're just a special guy, man. And your soul warms my heart. We've broken each other's chops often, and man, your soul warms my heart, and I just thank you for what you're doing. And on the resilience front, man, if you're teaching that, you got to live it to teach it. You're the example of it. And thank you for everything you're doing and for being so open with us today. You're awesome, buddy. And look forward to catching up soon again.
Appreciate it, brother.
That's so cool. Yeah, it was not your time, that's for sure. Oh my goodness. Janet. Hey, friend, you're muted.
Not used to being on this. I want to say that really, I love you. I love coming on and hearing you and what you're doing, and support you 100%. And what everybody else said. The thing is what you are a great example of is how successful failure can be. Right? Really. And you're right. God has a plan. There's several times I couldn't have been here too, but not finished with us yet. And we don't know the whole story, and we just have to trust and go along with that. So, and I can hardly wait till I can come and meet in person and go to do one of the events. And I'm a little rusty in the riding, but my horse saved my life umpteen times. Love you.
Love you too. Look forward to you coming down.
Let's see. Chris, did you want to say something? Did you have your hand up?
I had my hand up, but you answered my question, so I put my hand back down to give someone else an opportunity. But since I'm muted, I'll just say thank you for sharing your story and being so vulnerable with us. That's really powerful stuff. And I just think it's such a great comeback story, you know, like I love these comeback stories. Just love it. I love it. It's such a warrior type thing, you know. And then like, I just think it's amazing too that at some point you went from probably like resentments and anger to acceptance and seeing, you know, how everything fell into place and happened the way it's supposed to. I just think that's such a magical thing. And I know in my own experience, I had some of that too. So I'm grateful you're here, man. Thanks for sharing, and keep crushing it.
Oh,
Appreciate it.
it's, you know, it's really cool, the people on these groups. So really most everybody here, you know, that I know, everybody has had a crushing story. And this is the picture of resilience right here, is the people on these calls. And I think that's why people are so receptive to, you know, other people's courage. And, you know, like David said, bouncing forward. I see all of you as bouncing forward. And so I love that term. And Lynette, you've got a comment, question?
Hey, yeah, sorry I jumped in late, so I only caught the tail end of the story, but can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I was just wanting to ask, how many years was he in the service again?
About 2.5.
Yeah. How do you think that affected you when you got out and you started, you know, working through the PTSD things and things that you had endured? And so the horse was mostly what helped the most, right?
I mean, the horses helped in some aspects, you know, with the getting a control of myself. But you know, just getting out into nature, going hiking, going kayaking, just surrounding myself with nature and removing myself from the hustle and bustle of everyday life. It's like a recharge, you know. You're giving your body a chance to recharge, and for me, that's important. That's, you know, when I go out and I ride my horses or I go hiking, I come back feeling recharged and ready to take on whatever's ahead of me. And I think a lot of times we get so caught up in living life that we forget to enjoy life. And yeah.
Yes,
Hope that answered your question.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, I think nature is really important. I mean, as far as, you know, self-care actually is what I meant. That was the word I was thinking of. But my husband was in the Marines for 4 years, and he really still carries a lot of anger. I think the PTSD, the temper, like you were talking about, that you had quite a temper. How far away isn't your ranch out west?
We're moving to Texas on December 1st.
Oh, Texas. Cool. Well, that's a little bit of a drive from South Carolina, but hey, I think it's probably worth the drive.
Well, if we can find a location, we'll come out to, we're still putting together our road tour for 2022, adding locations to it.
Awesome.
If y'all got a connection out that way, we'll make it a stop.
Well, I am definitely a networker. So if you need some help, you can definitely connect with me, and I might be able to hit my network and see if I can help you out with that, with the location sponsors or whatever you might need.
Awesome. I'll reach out to you.
Okay. Thanks again for your story.
Thank you.
Then how about Scott and then Ryan?
Hey, thanks, Sarah. Hey, Michael, I want to apologize. My plan was to be on at the beginning, but you know how plans go. I had some issues with rental property, then insurance. It all came at the same time. So I'm sorry I missed your story because I really did want to hear it. I caught the very, very tail end when you were in the question and answer period here, but something you said is so important. And I think it's so true that, as we live life, it's easy to not be in balance with other important parts of who you are, mind, body, spirit. And, you tend to sometimes funnel into one area and you neglect those other areas. And, balance in life it's difficult. I'm not sure there is really balance. I think you tend to go from one thing to the next and you just try to manage it the best you can, right? We all struggle with that, but I just want to say from Marine to Marine, I am proud of you, man. God bless you. Thanks for everything you're doing to help others. That's a sign of the goodness of people too, is, we all go through struggles, some more than others, but what do you do on the other side of that struggle? And you're helping people. And that's a tall glass of water. And it says a lot about you, and God bless you.
Appreciate it, Scott.
Ryan?
Hey, Mike. First off, I just wanted to say thanks for sharing that. I know I'm kind of new to the group here and haven't really got to really share much about myself with you guys, but those times will definitely be coming. But I just want to say I appreciate what you shared and how you dealt with it, and it really, personal relates. Like we always say, like-minded people need to stick together in a sense. So, well, definitely looking forward to maybe eventually taking a trip out to the ranch though in Texas and ride a horse for the first time now. So, and I do want to throw in there, I think Christopher is probably one of the most intense people I've ever seen and met. So throw that out there as well. So
He's like a giant teddy bear, though. He just comes across as intense, but he's a big old softy.
I swear you close your eyes, it sounds like Hulk Hogan's talking, but he's intense.
Chris is like one of these strong teddy bears. That's great. I love that.
Hey, I wanted to throw in real quick that David, come on, dude, you do freaking fine. Chris is he's good, but you have your deal too. So he's hard to follow, but you do quite well, Dave.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate that. I learned everything I know from him.
Dave's the big sexy.
David, that's so true. I second that too. It's so great to have so many different flavors. That's what makes this whole thing really fun and interesting and so educational too. So Sheba.
Oh, hi. I'm having a really bad connection, so I'm going to try. Thank you so much, Michael. You truly inspire me. You're like such a role model. Two things, and then I'll go to my question. I want to tell you that you're not alone. I work with veterans, and I hear that so many times of medications not working, the betrayal with command. It's really heartbreaking how common those experiences are. So I want to validate what you had shared earlier, and thank you so much for showing so much courage. It's not easy to express, what you have shared. My question to you is, you've been through so much traumatic experiences, and I'm curious to learn from you here. What did these, I'm sure along your way, along your path, you've met therapists, social workers, doctors, all these providers. And what did they miss, or did they miss something? What is a message you want to give them? What message do you have for these providers that to truly understand the pain that a veteran goes through, or the pain that you went through? So yeah, what is something that you would like to say to providers in general? And thank you so much again.
That's a really good question. I will say, I've been to a couple different therapists and counseling and all of that, but I'll tell you the most healing thing for me was actually not a mental health professional. It was a good friend of mine that I had in Hawaii. He was a contractor in the Middle East and Africa for 13 years. And the conversations that I had with him were the most healing conversations for me. And I don't know, I guess I'm sure a lot of the veterans and first responders on here probably feel the same way. It's kind of hard for us to talk to somebody that's not a veteran or first responder. There's just some kind of mental block there where we're naturally like, you don't know, what do you know? Like, you haven't been through what I've been through, which I would say is more on us than it is on them. So I would more say to veterans and first responders, like, accept the help, you know, like, we all go through different stuff. Nobody else has walked in your shoes. We might have walked similar shoes, but if somebody's trying to help, like, accept that help. Now, with that being said, there are some therapists and counselors that, you know, they might not be a good fit for you, or you've got to find one that you're comfortable with talking to, one that, you know, you kind of match up on, because we're all different. We all have different personalities. Somebody might be one counselor might be a little more upfront and in your face, and if you're not okay and ready with that, well, then that's not the counselor for you. For me, I would prefer that. Be like, okay, just tell me how it is. But some people, that's not it. So it's just I think that would apply to both sides, though. Like, if you're the counselor and you see that you're not able to connect with that person, maybe refer them to somebody that you think would be able to reach them better. And then on our side, if you see that that's not working, go find somebody else, or, like I said, reverse the role there. I don't know if that answered your question.
You absolutely did. Thank you so much. And really quickly, which part of Texas are you all moving to?
Austin.
Austin. Perfect. Thank you so much again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, this has been really great.
Yeah,
Michael,
Sarah.
yes.
Yeah, can I ask one more question? Something
Sure.
I just thought of, and yeah, thanks. Michael, again, I didn't hear, you know, all the details, but twice I've heard about betrayal in the command structure. Do you know Dr. Teresa Larson by chance? You've probably seen that name maybe on LinkedIn.
I have seen that name. Yeah.
Yeah, she was an officer. You know, she went in as a second lieutenant, and she had some significant problems that she was, you know, hiding because she had to have the game face. And when she finally revealed it to the command, you know, she's an officer, but they didn't take it well, and it's heartbreaking because when you look back at it from outside looking in, you know, you think, well, what the heck is their deal? Why can't they see this, right? And sometimes it depends on who's sitting in those seats as to what they're going to do. But then when she actually went to get help, even the people, counselors and medical folks just didn't deal with it appropriately. And then it got worse for her because she felt, well, geez, maybe it's me. And, you know, they were just missing her issues. And she finally found the right person. Just like you said, you know, all counselors aren't necessarily able to handle things, or, you know, whoever these folks are that you're going to help. I just want to say that's such a wise thing, because, you know, it's not a one size fits all, and you have to be willing to, you know, for lack of a better word, kind of shop around on finding the person that's going to actually be a benefit to you and listen and help get you through those things. So good on you. And it happens to officers and enlisted. You know, it's and it's unfortunate. It shouldn't happen like that.
Sarah, I didn't raise my hand. I don't know how to do it. So can I go ahead and just make a quick comment? The biggest thing for me personally is trust and betrayal. That's what I deal with. You know, the loyalty stuff just sometimes just does not exist. So trust and betrayal is huge for me. And when I was going through my stuff, that was the biggest thing. You know, I have the faith and the spiritual and that, but it was like, how do I trust? And unless we trust, we're not going to get anywhere. And I even, for me, the trust was within my pastor at church, but I even told him, like, I don't even trust anyone. How do you want me to trust God? You know, I got to that point where I was so cynical that I was even angry at God. But I was told a quote that, and I'm going to read it to you, you know, like how we always talk about, you know, when one door closes, one opens, we're here for a purpose. There's a reason for this. You know, you use what you've gone through to help others. But there's a quote that was said to me, and it said, if you want God to close and open doors, you best get your hand off the doorknob. And I think that kind of says it all. We're so used to, and me too, like, you know, we have to be in control of the situation and we want things to go a certain way. We want this, we want that. But again, we have to go back to everything in God's timing. You know, for whatever reason, your lessons, I don't know if that's the correct word, but lessons of what you needed to learn as a person to be able to fulfill your path, you know, to helping others. Every experience is an opportunity to help someone else. I used to go through things and say, okay, God, what's next? I can handle this. I can handle this. Then it was like, oh no, I don't want to know because I can't handle this shit anymore. But now I look back and it's like every ugly thing that has happened, every horrible thing that, you know, why I have PTSD, why I have all this stuff going on in my head is another opportunity for me to use to connect with someone that can relate with me. And like you said, Michael, I am that person. Don't come to me and talk to me about how you feel or you know how I feel because you don't. And as a nurse, that was my thing. Don't tell a patient, I know how you feel because you don't. And so now I can go to you, Michael. We've had deep conversations, you know, and I can say, I understand. I know what you're talking about. I've been there too. And that is the biggest thing with someone that you have that you connect with, that your therapist. I always tell my patients, you don't like your doctor, get another one. You know, I went through doctors to find out what was wrong with me because I didn't like the vibe of the room. You know, I'm the patient. You're here to help me. You're not here to judge me for the stuff that has gone on or has happened to me. So once again, those are huge. Trust, the betrayal, and get a provider that you are comfortable with. Otherwise, it's just going to hold you back in where you need to get.
Thank you, Brenda.
You're welcome.
We have like 3 minutes. Can we move to Daniel and then Chris Gregorio maybe close us out if we have time?
Absolutely. Just real quick. Yeah, the whole thing about trust and finding somebody to talk to, you know, my journey started real early. When I was 18, I lost my dad and then I went right into the military. And I was struggling early on at my first duty station. So, you know, I was born and raised Roman Catholic. So I said, well, I'm going to go talk to somebody I trust, the chaplain, you know, at my unit, because I was angry, I was acting out, I was drinking, I was doing all kinds of crazy stuff as a 19-year-old knucklehead suffering from unresolved grief. So I go to the chaplain and pour out my heart to him, and he just hands me a pamphlet that says, hey, read this. If you still got some issues, talk to me again. I said, okay, cool. So that began that compartmentalization of my emotions. Still struggling, I went back a few months later. He didn't remember me. And this time, at least he gave me a book. It wasn't just a pamphlet, but same thing. You know, read this book. And if you still have answers or questions, you know, come see me again. So a lot of times it's moving on from that or moving forward from that, but also finding somebody. And it may not be a traditional therapist, counselor, psychiatrist, or psychologist. It may be a life coach or somebody who really helped me, Sarah Kim Yeater, peak performance coach. You know, and they don't have all the initials behind their name and this and that, but neither do I. But just being able to be heard non-judgmentally is what really helped me. And it was through the help of a peak performance coach, not a traditional therapist.
Yeah.
Well, to that, I would say you can have all the initials and degrees and whatever you want behind your name, but nothing beats real life experience.
And even just connection, right? Just a genuine connection. Sometimes it's just not there. How about Chris Gregorio? Thank you, Daniel.
That's not a question, bro. You said something that we've talked for a long time, 1.5 years, and maybe this wasn't you, and maybe this is just some by chance thing. I was stationed in Hawaii from 2015 to 2020, and as a leadership instructor, and me and my wife went to Kailua Ranch, and I remember somebody telling me a story that their 5-year plan was to open up some ranch somewhere in the U.S. I don't know that that's you, brother, but something really it made the hairs on my arm stand up, man. God is good. Destiny's great.
Was it horseback riding?
Yes. And then zip lining.
So I worked at Kualoa Ranch from January 2017 to January 2019. From the summer of 2000. 2000. I worked 1.5 years. The last 1.5 years I worked in horseback. So I'm not gonna do that math because Marines aren't good at it. But
sorry about that. Yeah,
it was if it was a guy, it was probably me because I was the only guy that worked horseback.
July or August of 2017. She came to surprise me. I didn't know she was coming. She came to surprise me when we went over there. So, man, we crossed paths in more ways than one. Thank you so much again for your honesty and integrity and your vulnerability, brother. You're a great leader and a role model, like everybody else has said.
That's so cool. Well, we got to wrap this up so you can get on your other call. Michael, boy, do we appreciate you. I know I can speak for everybody. Our hearts are moved. Your example of resilience, of really bouncing forward, like David says, is really inspiring. And I'm so grateful that you're part of our family. Thank you for everything. What takeaway do you want us to keep?
Hey, like I said in the beginning, don't let your mistakes define you. Use them to go to higher places, and each day is a second chance. So do better.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael.